I'm happy to go first. It's Kate, and I am really looking forward to the call. It feels like longer than a week ago since we spoke, but I'm still on my holidays, so yeah, I'm not sure what's happening in the real world. But in this one, it's great. I've been spending time with grandchildren. Yes, I know, I don't look old enough, but I have. So that's been interesting. A 2-year-old and a 4-month-old. So we've been doing loads of kids things, aquariums and such like. So yeah, this is a kind of welcome break, really. And I'm really pleased that the internet's working because I wasn't sure what it would be like in the hotel. So I'm here.
I'm Brian. I'm not on holiday anymore as of last night. So back here in the office, which is a bit of a jarring change of venue from the last 2 weeks. But yeah, looking forward to the call, and I think I'm ready to go.
This is Bernard. I'm also looking forward to the call. We had a family reunion today. Jakob just arrived this afternoon. So we are complete now for another 2 weeks. So happy family.
Hi everyone, this is Mala. It's been a long day because I've been driving up from North Carolina all the way back home to Massachusetts. So the call, the connection is a little spotty. So if I drop off, I'll just catch up on the video, YouTube video later on. I'm excited to be here. I did have a chance to quickly go through the deck that Beatrice had sent across. And I'm excited about the next steps and what we're doing here. Thank you.
I'm arriving ready to go. I've been going since 6 a.m. this morning, so this is my kind of 5th call back to back. I'm flying to Canada to work with Facebook tomorrow, so I'm kind of interested in that. And then next week I'm going to Texas, and then the week after that I'm going to Tahoe. So I seem to be on tour over the next month. So I spent yesterday trying to get all my ducks in a row to be out going. So I've been finding these calls really helpful in all areas of my life, and I feel really grateful for that. So I'm arriving grateful and ready to go.
Hello. It's lovely to see everybody. I'm quite tired. Yesterday, sounds like you, Leanna, my first call was at 6 and my last call finished at 9, and today is a similar day, but I'm also really looking forward to Kate and our last call of today with Joost de Blok from Bertzorg. It's always lovely to hear what he's up to. And I've been doing a lot of writing lately, and I'm just amazed, grateful, curious about how much this work is not only influencing my writing, but influencing my thinking. And then feeling a little bit, anxious isn't the right word, but like I need to be practicing with other humans at this level more. And so I don't know how to make that happen. If I can make that happen, if one can even make that happen. And then feeling a little bit of tension and overwhelmed because I'm just in a really busy period with work, and yeah, just trying to navigate stuff that enlivens me. I wrote big piece yesterday about work that enlivens, work that gives life, work that generates life. And I can find myself often getting into like this heady, esoteric space that I can live in for a while, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Sorry, that was a little bit longer than just a cursory chicken, but thanks for listening.
Suzanne. I guess I'm the last one. Feeling great. Happy to be here. Not feeling the jet lag yet. I may kick in this afternoon, but not now. And actually working on preparing for today's discussion was helpful for me this morning because it helped me transition from doing nothing for 2 weeks to getting back into thinking about work and getting my brain reorganized. So I don't know if you have seen what I sent you. If you have, great. If you have not, it's okay because that's what we can review today. But happy to read it. How do you want to proceed?
Do we just jump in? Do we just let Beatrice run with it?
And maybe a way to jump into it is, instead of me jumping into it, is more asking for immediate reaction. We can go into the detail later, but since and I didn't get it, I know some of you looked at it, maybe not all of you. Is there anything that jumped out, or questions, or insights, or struggle?
I'm just going to take a few minutes to look at it now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Does it make sense for you to kind of walk through at least the overview points, because since not everybody has had a chance to read it?
There is no really overview point. So if I jump into it, I will jump. I'm happy to do that. Let me. So is it useful if I share it, or do you have a copy in front of you, and I don't need to share the screen?
I've got a copy, but happy for you if other people want it shared.
I have a copy, so I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I cannot look at it. She's writing. So, so actually, it might be useful to go through not linearly, but the way I did it this morning, which is go back to the original frameworks, and I wanted a clean copy, so I redrew it on a PowerPoint, and instead of projects, I had mentioned that this was a framework that I use with regenesis in the context of regenerative projects, so I replaced projects by the DDO network. And as I was going through the process and trying to do it intelligently, that is, not just type the words, but thinking through the process again, and making sure that it was logical, because at the last conversation I had this in mind, but I hadn't gone through the whole process. And so to me, it still does make a lot of sense. And but what I also realized is that once I finished, I said, oh, I feel I need some premises here to kind of create not so much about an introduction, but kind of a boundary of what this framework is all about, and especially the thinking that is behind it. And so that's after the fact, I created the list of premises, and that was very useful to me, because as I wrote the premises, I got a big relief, because I was a bit concerned about the wake-up exercise that we talked about last time, and saying how I'm going to introduce this, and with the whole group, assuming we use this as a whole group, how do I wake up everybody and raise the level of consciousness before entering into the exercise? and the premises really help. So I didn't include the question in the exercise. I still want to think about it, but I think the wake up exercise should be about the premises. So now if I start with the premises, the first premise, which I had written and deleted because I thought it was unnecessary, but it's the premise number 0, is I consider the DDO network as a living system. So that was, and so the next one is living system engage in a core process that generates value, and that is very, very critical. Is that that's how living system thrives, and they thrive in community and in nested systems. Is that within a hierarchy of nested systems, living systems generate value to one another. It's reciprocal, but it has definitely a direction from the nested system to the larger system. And so we talk about value-adding process and value-adding role. When a system engage in a process, it also plays a very specific role. And that's this value adding is very important. It's not value added. That is also very important to notice. We hear a lot in business about value added, which is increasing the value of a product at a given time. Here it is not what that means. The adding is a process in the sense that this process is ongoing and continuously evolving. So we have to think of the network here engaging in playing a role that is and engaging in a process that is generating ongoing value, and evolving that value and evolving the process and evolving the roles as we grow and develop over time. And as, of course, we have an impact on the system we are interacting with, and those systems needs different things. So it's not static. Although here, if we start thinking in terms of value adding process and role that is really anchored into our essence, it is true that a living system can play multiple processes and add different type of value. But when we look at the essence of the system, there is a core process and core value, which is very unique to the system. And so in that case, it is maybe the way that process and value shape is different, but it is always very, very connected to the essence of the system. Okay. And the purpose of the systems is very much related to the potential not only of the system itself, but of the potential of the system that, in this case, the network serves. So the notion of potential is very, very important, and as you will see in the framework, we actually start with potential. So in order to see, in order to uncover the potential, the role, and the value that is generated, and the process that is being used, it is really important to use a capability called imaging, which is different than imagination. Imaging is this ability to see a system in action, to see it alive and operating in the world. If we don't have this capability, I would say that we cannot actually use a framework, because all this framework is based on this ability to image. And so it means putting ourselves into the shoes of all those systems that we are serving, but it's not imagination in the sense of you know, creating something that is not real. It is creating an image of the mind of those nested systems working, interacting with one another, and then engaging in reciprocal value generation and processes. So I think when I came up at this point, I realized that the wake-up exercise is probably a wake-up exercise on imaging, and probably imaging an organization or system that the participants are very, very familiar with, looking at that system within its context, within its nested systems, and start really understanding, seeing. It's really this ability to, you know, close your eyes and see the process. It's a difference between how I would describe swimming, for instance, and the feeling of swimming itself. And that's what we're trying to image is having that perception, that understanding that is really embodied, that is very real and concrete of the process of swimming, as opposed to a kind of a detached description of what swimming is all about. So it's very much based on the experience of that system. Any questions so far?
I have a quick question. So in the exercise, you're expecting people to think about a network or an organization that they are completely familiar with, not with the DDO network, and you take them through that as a way of getting people's heads into, this is what we're expecting over the next however many conversations. Right, that's helpful. Thanks.
I have a question. You've said imaging is different than imagination. Because when I think, so you're saying put yourself into swimming and really sense it in your body, as opposed to picture it in your head.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, it all happens in the head. That's why it's challenging. But it is really an embodied experience. You see yourself swimming. You can feel the water around you. You can feel the movement of your arms and your legs.
Beatrice, I had a quick question on that, on imaging as well. Is that different from aspiration, just for my own understanding?
Oh yes, completely, because aspiration can use imagination in the sense that it is not necessarily grounded. Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So imaging is more of an experience where you are fully immersed in the experience in your whole body, with your whole body. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have we lost Bernard and Suzanne?
No, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay, and I'm not seeing Bernard anymore. But...
It looks like he's turned his camera off.
Okay. For some reason, it's interesting. I'm not seeing the window, but it's okay. All right. So, as I mentioned last time, the first step for us is to map the nested system. So the core is, of course, the DDO network. And then the DDO network serves a second system and a larger system. I play with it a bit this morning. Again, it's not an infinite number of possibilities. I have 3, but actually pretty much 2, because there is one that I think is maybe not right. But But again, and between the two that I can't figure it out. Actually, it's really interesting. So, so the question here is, what and who does the network serve directly? And I think we have to define also what the network is, because the network is a community of practitioners engaged in developmental work. So what and who does that community serve directly, and then what's the next system above? The too easy answer then is the organization or practitioners who are not part of the network. Are we serving practitioners or are we serving organization? And again, here it requires a bit of imaging the network again in action, saying, when we engage in our activities, who are we interacting with primarily? Are we interacting with individuals who are learning to become developmental practitioners or developing themselves, and who are then serving organizations? Or those people are inside? I think the question for me this morning is putting the practitioners as a second system at the proximate whole. I was like, well, why would they stay outside? And why would we, the 30 of us as part of the network right now, be inside? Just, I don't know. It's like, but they could be a group of people like us who wants to help develop other practitioners, but they are not necessarily within the network. That's possible, but it's important to see that difference, right? They are not in the network. We are serving them. We're providing product and services and workshop. I don't know what we do with them, but we are serving them, or we are serving organization. And here I'm really struggling with this, because we are also, in this process, we are also serving ourselves, in the sense that the network. And so that's another thing that I'm thinking is like, then should we talk about the network as a more abstract entity that maybe is serving practitioners, but the practitioners are ourselves, including other people? And that might be the way to look at it. In that case, it would work better for me. If the network here is an organization, but it is just the entity, the abstract entity serving DDO practitioners, and those DDO practitioners are serving the 1 million organizations that we have been talking about.
And sorry, can I?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're saying DDO practitioners, something just clicked for me, because I recall that some of the conversation back and forth about who is this for has been about DDO practitioners in terms of consultants, or DDO practitioners in terms of humans doing the work. I feel like everybody so far that's re-opted back into this network is doing the work, regardless of whether they're working in an organization where they're doing the work or doing the work in other ways. So is that how you're holding the phrase DDO practitioners?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, I think, all-encompassing, but I had that same question as well this morning. It's like, who am I? How am I defining this? So that's absolutely right. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Brian had mentioned in the past, and I think at the last session, that there may be a field at some point, and the field of developmental organization. And in this particular case, I have a tendency to want to put the field, you know, it's a next larger system, but it's kind of a, but again, that's the question. I mean, is the field the greater whole, or is the field the kind of the field within which the greater whole is embedded? So the question for me here is, how are we going to go and define it?
And I suppose my question is, and this is, I think this is just trying to make sense of it, is these questions, are they answered by the group as a whole, or are we trying to answer those questions as a kind of foundation before we get to the workshop or workshops?
Right. My thinking was they should be answered by the group as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a tough question.
Yeah, because we talked a lot, didn't we, around these questions, or I feel like we did in OHI and didn't land anywhere. So I suppose I think I've got some. I'm just curious about. So with 30 people on a call, that's going to be hard work, Beatrice.
Yes, and I think it needs that portion in and of itself, which I've not included. It needs a process itself to define, to help define.
Yeah, yeah.
And because it's a hierarchy of system, and that in the hierarchy, those systems are the same. It's a matter of where we are putting them in their relationship, they are the same. With the specification that Suzanne just mentioned in terms of the practitioner, who are we talking about? So we need to define that. And to some extent, we may want to define, if this is appropriate, that might not be, maybe we want to be completely generic, but we may want to think in terms of the organization themselves. Is there any kind of organization? Is there some type of organization? That's another thing. But at least for the practitioner, I think that the question that Suzanne raised is really important. But no matter how you define, this is still network. There is network, practitioner, organization, and a field. And so to some extent, I feel that no matter how we define the hierarchy, it's only off of one. And if we leave the field, if we agree that the field is kind of the last systems, and it could be the fourth system, then we're only dealing with practitioners and organization. And so to some extent, it's not in our case, it would not be right if I was talking about a place-based project, because the boundaries of the place within which a project is embedded is very important. And if you get the boundary wrong, it won't work. You'll be off. There's something that won't work. But in our case, I don't know. I think it might be more flexible. And we can always pick one, go through the process, and realize in the process that actually maybe we need to think about it differently. But so I'm not too worried about it to some extent, but I think it's important to. So what I would say, Kate, is I think it's an important conversation to have with the whole group. But we can put the 3 or 4 tentative on the screen, because they are not 1,000; they're just 3 or 4, and discuss them, and then kind of have a conversation and get the one that feels the most appropriate.
I have a question about the 1 million organizations. So I haven't been in Ojai, and I'm not sure if this is just a metaphor of Brian, or if this is already a vision that we all are committed to. And so if we are committed to this vision, then for me the question would rather be, where do we feel, do we have the longest, the strongest, do you say lever or lever?
Mhm.
So then it's just a matter of tactic, maybe even, how to get there. And maybe it's via practitioners or via consultants or via whatever, or via something else. But I'm not sure about this 1 million, if this is already something that we can build on.
I'm not sure that it's a commitment for the whole group. It was a advocacy that I had at the beginning of the network, right from the very beginning, to say that I had a vision that we make a difference in the world that was beyond us just being effective in the organizations that we're personally engaged in, that there be some sort of multiplicative or exponential impact. And 1 million seemed like an appropriately large number to be able to say, we're not going to do that just by the 30 of us or 100 of us or even 1,000 of us. How do we think beyond that to say, no, we want to impact, have a material difference in the world beyond just a smaller group of practitioners? So it was chosen a little bit for shock factor, to say, oh, if we're going to play that game, it's a different game.
Yeah, and I recall it was challenged in the same, or questioned in the same way you're doing it now, Bernard, at the Ojai meeting. The question that it raised for me, listening to you, Brian, is actually the impact of the field. Because if the 1 million organization was still very much core to our thinking process, then it's almost that the field becomes way more important than the organization. But how do you, it's kind of a catch-22, because how do you create a field without the organization? But it's without a field, without a very strong field, you do not reach out. Individuals do not reach out to 1 million organization. A field can do that. So.
Or if you said it in very practical terms, it has something to do with the credibility of this approach of other organizational practitioners in the world starting to view this as something that they would need to start paying attention to, both personally and in their work. So you can, maybe you call that the field, maybe you call that something else. But how does this start to get to a tipping point?
Yeah, and I mean that's the question for me is who in the field are we trying to influence or awaken? Is it traditional development practitioners, or is it leaders in organizations? Obviously, I think the answer is both, but I think that then hooks me back to, you know, who are we?
And your question is grounded in the assumption that the field exists, and I would question that.
I think it depends on how you define the field, right? I mean, if the field is, you know, every organization in the world, then clearly exists.
That's not what I mean by a field.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm talking about a field in here is really an energy field. It's so the other word that we could use is a movement. It's so think about Martin Luther King, things of the fight against apartheid, things of large movement that have been created. They are created by individuals that are taking really strong action, that are creating an energy that is transformative and that has an impact on the systems that it touches and on society in general. And if I speak from a regenerative perspective, there is no regeneration without that energy field for the way we defined it.
Yeah, I get that. And I think the way that I think about it is, and this is probably a baseless assumption, that there are sentient beings, humans, within a great number of organizations that are holding the energy, but it's latent. So, sorry, I can get way too esoteric down there. Is energy only when it's activated, or is energy when it's sitting there in our bodies just waiting to be activated?
Right. So you could say, and I would agree, that there is a lot of potential energy out there that is being I'm finding my words today, but that is being kept inactive, if you want, by the structure of the system within which those people are in, that is waiting to be activated. But that is if we talk about an energy field within in the context of something that is going to enable the transformation that we want to create, then it has to be activated. So, and it is very intentional, and I suspect it can be done by accident, but rarely. Usually, an energy field is something that is being created, very intentional.
You can also think about it in terms of what are the assumptions and beliefs that live in the communal space. So I think you could either think about practitioners or people who are inside of organizations or leaders of organizations. There is a predominant assumption set around what makes organizations effective, how organizations change, how organizations achieve their purpose or their goals. And that dominant assumption set or belief set prevents, restricts our notions around development and potential and what we're committed to here in this network. So that, without getting esoteric about it, would include the esotericism, but without getting esoteric about it, what would it take to start to change those assumptions and beliefs about how organizations work and what change is possible within organizations and the role that organizations play in the world?
I have a more practical question. I think we have an hour today. We have a quarter of an hour to go. My question is, what kind of clarity do we need to have to make another step? I thought that we wanted to define a time frame or something, when to invite people. I think the next step would be this wake-up session, I think. And my question is, for example, this 1 million organizations or something else, do we need to have some kind of, I don't know, term that is like an assumption that we are building upon, or is it the meetings that would produce this kind of clarity? So I'm not sure which kind of clarity we need and what the role of our core group would be.
That kind of relates back to my question, really. So I think I'm with you in terms of the wake-up conversation. that these are some of the questions that need to be answered, or that we need to have some conversation and thoughts, some thinking about. But in terms of the invitation to the members, it feels to me like we need to be saying something like, it's 3 conversations, you know, a series of 3 conversations. The first will be the second, so that we're inviting people to be part of that journey. Because I think just one on its own, I don't know, it feels like it needs to be part of a structure to create something, which I think you are presenting, Beatrice, in terms of, here's a series of conversations that are going to get us somewhere. Yeah, I suppose that was what was related to my question about, do we do that, or is this, here's the first question, here, like Beatrice has given us some help to think through, these are the kind of questions that we need to answer in this first conversation. Then the second conversation, here are some of the questions. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
The questions that needs to answer all the questions that are being raised right now. And I think they are going to come up in the whole group conversation. And I think what might be useful is for this group here to have that conversation. So to some extent, run through the process a little bit here so that we can raise a question. We don't have to have the answers to those questions, but so that we can hold as a group, and not just me here, but as a group, we can hold the container for the larger group conversation and not be taken too much by surprises of when, you know, somebody asks about the 1 million organization or the field or the definitions and so on and so forth. I think that's all those questions are important, and they are very legitimate for this conversation, for the whole process. Because in order to create that image, we need to be able to have a concrete. This is the value of those frameworks, so they are extremely concrete. If we use them abstractly, we're not getting the value that we can. So we have to be very specific and very concrete. But by being very specific and very concrete, it raises all those questions, which we don't have necessary answers because, frankly, we don't know. And that's part of the process of getting, as we engage in that conversation, is getting a deeper understanding ourselves of who we are, who we interact with, how do we do that, what value we generate, what it is that we are really trying to achieve. So here we are really at the core of the question of who is this network and what it is trying to achieve. Is it trying to create an energy field that is going to impact the 1 million organization? And to create that energy field, it needs to work with a few organizations to start the work. And practitioners, and what's the relationship there, and who are the practitioners, and so on and so forth.
Beatrice, do you see that as, so for this group to work through the process, are we talking, because an hour feels like just crackers really, to even just this first conversation, you know, an hour is just not enough. Do you see that as a kind of half a day that we spend together working through the process so that we are familiar and confident around the kind of questions that are likely to come up? Or how do you see that working for this group?
I think it might be useful to have in the next meeting a little bit more than an hour, but I also think that, and yeah, if I only have 10 more minutes, is for me now to really run through the whole process, and then you have it now, and as you, and I would think that it would be very useful for each one of you to start playing with it. Start mapping the nested systems, all the different assumptions or different candidates, and play with the framework and try to imagine. I think we all, you know, consciously or unconsciously, I think we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So I think we're all going to come up with the same. We're going to converge at some point. It is really, really useful for each one of us to start this process, to actually work through the process individually. And it's actually the only way where you can get a sense of how it actually works.
I guess I'm wondering if there's seems like there's two things going on at the same time. Are we agreeing to the overall approach that we're going to use with the larger group, or are we underwriting, supporting Beatrice's advocacy here? And then, and if so, then what does it take to start to put that into motion? And then number two, in what's the role that we play in each of those meetings? So if there are 3 meetings, what does it take to start to kick off the first meeting? And yeah, we might need to play a supporting role in that first meeting and need to do some pre-work beforehand. But can those things go in parallel, or do we have to run them all out sequentially?
So for me, I'm happy to go with the process. I'm not sure if we are yet at the point where we are ready to invite other people. I think we need something else before, and maybe it would be a session where we are really more or less participants and you are really facilitating the process clearly. And then we, at the end of the meeting, we would talk about how we can support you in holding the space together with the participants.
I too, this is Mala, I too agree with Bernard with what he said. I think just because I feel like I'm in a space where this is very new for me, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, so it'll be really useful to be a participant myself and then roll the ball forward to the rest of the group. Thank you.
I agree as well.
I kind of don't agree, but I'm happy to go with the group.
What would you present? Do you have an alternative, Susan?
Yeah, I feel like that I'm feeling potentially like getting conflated with the purpose of this core group and the process with the whole, and I'm not sure that doing part of the process in isolation is just feels right or appropriate to me. But if that's what everybody else feels they need, then I'm happy to go with it.
I don't feel like I need to do it at all. I could do it as part, I could just do it with the hope. I could jump in. I don't feel like I need to. But I'm kind of interested in it.
I'm really happy to jump in and offer, like, open up the invitation to the whole and to work through the process. I think the thing I heard, or whether I've heard it incorrectly, was that what Beatrice was advocating was that we are familiar enough with this process that it isn't just Beatrice holding it. And I think what I'm hearing is not everybody feels really comfortable with the process. So I think a go at the process, that's what I think I'm hearing, but that could be wrong.
Yes, and I think it would be useful for this core group to hold the container for the large group. And to hold that container, you don't need the answer. We are not working out the process so that you know the answers to the question, that you have enough familiarity with the framework so that you're comfortable with the process itself. And whether what I was just adding, Leanne, and then I'll let you speak, is that whether the familiarity can be by yourself. You just, the questions are laid out, so play with it. You have it now. So go through the process, follow the questions and the numbers, and on the two frameworks, and see what makes sense for you. And if you have any questions more about the process itself than the answer to those questions, or we have another session to go through the process together. Or I can take the next 4 minutes to run through it very quickly. Sorry, Leanne, go ahead.
Sorry, my internet's a bit unstable, so I thought you had finished. I think for me, there'd be if I went through the process, there'd be a danger that I'd become attached to the way that the process had worked. I think that's my only concern about going through. And I already have in my head somewhere about how I think I want the outcome to be. So that's my only danger about going through the process myself.
Makes sense.
So this is Mala, and I just wanted to clarify, Kate. Thank you for raising. Thank you for raising that point. So my intention was, I want to play with it, like you said, Beatrice, and come up with my own answers, and perhaps just have another session with you to basically, in some ways, not validate, but just to sort of get some certainty around that I'm sensing this in the right way, or I'm thinking about this in the right way. Does that make any sense?
Yes, and I think I very much like the way you put it, is that what matters to me is that we are thinking about this the right way. I don't care about the answer, but how do we
Yes. Yes.
Somebody used the term to jump in, so I'm happy to jump in if I can be a participant there. But if you, Beatrice, are expecting from me as a member of the core group something special, then it could be that I don't know what to offer or what to do, and to meet your expectation then. So if I can be just a participant, I'm happy to just jump.
Right, and I think I'm not expecting anything else, but I think there is a participant who is going to see this for the first time and a participant who already had a little bit of experience going through it, and that might just make that a difference.
So are you suggesting another meeting with us, or are you suggesting to jump with the others?
So what does need, this is not complete, obviously. The wake up exercise is not there yet, so needs to be created. The conversation of the nested systems, and I think, as I said, we need to have 3 or 4 different drafts of it, so that needs to be included. And then figuring out, it's like chunking this in terms of a 3 sessions meeting. Again, I'll know for sure once I have kind of the overall flow, but my sense is that the first meeting is kind of an introduction of what we want to do, a presentation of the premise, discussion of the premise, and then a wake-up exercise, and then a discussion of the nested system. And then what I would see also at the end of that session, and actually this is a question mark. So one option will be at the end of that session, present. You have to, yes, Susanna had to go. Present the frameworks without working it. And then session 2 would be zooming in on one nested system and then work through the framework And session 3, I will not define yet because it all depends on where we are. So session 3 will be defined. We do great, we may say 2 sessions is enough. So session 3 is just a wrap up or next step or whatever. But I will certainly not define it yet because I don't know what it will be required. The other thing I didn't mention today, but I think it's very important, I think for me, but I suspect it is for you, is that the overall process is developmental for the group. So that's another thing that I want to hold, and in that process, really figuring out how, I think I mentioned the imaging process as a core capability to work with a living system. That's one, but maybe there are other developmental capabilities. So here, if I'm thinking in terms of products, outcome of the sessions, there is obviously, we want to have a sense of the core process, core role of the network, and maybe a statement of purpose. But I think there are other products, other outcomes that we may want to have at the end of those sessions, and that are developmental, that are not the functional things, but are more developmental. And I think it's important for us to think about what that might do as well. And so, example of this process is the first time we are re-engaging with the whole group. So re-engaging will, re-engaging being, I mean, all those are very important.
My question is, how can we finish and how can we define the next step?
So it sounds like we need another meeting, perhaps a somewhat longer one, to wrap up our thinking about this whole process, and then to jump in after that.
Mm.
And in the meantime, we all play with the process individually.
Right.
Does that make sense to me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then between now and the next meeting, Beatrice will continue to build out the process.
Mm-hmm. So you would write an outline of the sessions, of the elements of the sessions?
Yeah, the elements. I do process flow, kind of having sense, and I want also a list of products or outcomes that are beyond just the pure functional outcomes of this.
Okay. Are we trying to find a time for our next meeting?
How long do we want the next meeting?
I think 90 minutes.
Okay.
This time next Monday?
Yes.
Yeah, I could do that.
Mara?
Give me one quick second. Just quickly checking my calendar.
Yeah, sure.
Well, don't be trying to do that while you drive.
I know I'm literally like driving the slowest lane and just thinking, yeah, that's good for me. 90 minutes for next Monday this time. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Should I invite, or are you inviting Brian?
Could you invite Bernard?
Okay.
And then we'll, Susan and Leanne, they would check to make sure, so we'll hear from them.
Beatrice, I didn't ask you, but I saw you nodding, so I assume that you are also fine with the time. Okay. Okay. Do we need something else for tonight?
That's good.
Okay.
All right, everyone.
Sorry, I was just looking at I'm flying back from Brussels that day, so I was just checking the time, but it looks okay, I think, but I'll confirm it, but it should be okay.
Okay. As a meta comment, I have the impression that Susan and me are like alternating a semi-role of a facilitator. I'm not sure about that. So please give me a comment if you feel that this is too much, too little, okay, or should be altered.
It's great.
Yeah, I think the role of the facilitator is helpful.
Okay. Okay, are you still checking? You're muted.
Sorry, I am, but it won't be helpful to you because now I can't find my ticket. I can only find my mother's ticket. So you go ahead, book that slot in. I'm pretty sure I'll be in Scotland by that time. So yeah, I'm 80% confident. So if there was a problem, I'll let you know tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Beatrice.
Of course.
Thanks, Beatrice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Have a good
Brian.
week, everyone.
And
Bye,
you.
Mara. Bye, Kate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mala.
Bye.